let me tell you something that most pickup truck buyers never think about. While everybody is out there fighting over the same F-150s and Silverados, there are other trucks sitting on dealer lots collecting dust. And I mean really sitting. Some of these things have been on the lot for 60, 90, even 120 days. And when a dealer has a vehicle that long, something interesting happens. They get motivated. Real motivated. The kind of motivated that can mean a few $1,000s off the asking price, if you know what you're doing and you walk in prepared. Now, some of these trucks are sitting there for a very good reason. They have known problems, expensive maintenance histories, or reliability reputations that most smart buyers already learned to avoid. But here's the thing, not all of them. Some of these trucks are being overlooked simply because they don't wear the right badge, or because buyers are chasing something flashier, or because they depreciated fast off the lot and now nobody wants to touch them secondhand. And that's exactly where the opportunity is. So before we get into the list, I want to ask you something. What pickup truck are you driving right now? How many miles are on it? And if you had to do it all over again, would you buy the same truck? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely read them, and sometimes your real-world experiences are more useful to other buyers than anything I could say. Now let's get into it. Starting at number 5, we have the Nissan Titan. This is one of the most overlooked full-size trucks on the market, and it has been for years. When most buyers are shopping a full-size pickup, they immediately go to the Ford F-150, the Chevy Silverado, the Ram 1500, or the Toyota Tundra. The Nissan Titan is almost an afterthought, and that's reflected in the used market prices. You can find examples with reasonable mileage priced noticeably below comparable Tundras or F-150s, and that spread is bigger than most people realize. The reason the Titan struggles to move is mostly about market share and perception. Nissan has never been able to crack the full-size truck segment the way the domestics have. Towing and payload numbers have historically been behind the competition, and fleet buyers almost never spec a Titan. So there's less demand, which means dealers who take them in trade sometimes have trouble finding the right buyer. The generation to focus on is the second-generation Titan, which ran from 2016 onward. The 5.6-liter Endurance V8 in that generation is a solid engine with a decent track record. It's not the most sophisticated powertrain in the segment, but it's relatively straightforward mechanically. Where you want to be careful is with higher mileage examples that may develop transmission concerns, and you should always verify the service history on the four-wheel drive transfer case components. The Titan XD, which Nissan positioned as a heavy-duty alternative, is a more complicated story. That truck came with a Cummins diesel option for a period, and while some owners love it, parts availability and repair costs can be higher than expected. Approach the XD diesel with extra caution and make sure a diesel-experienced mechanic looks it over before you buy. For a buyer who wants a capable daily driver truck and doesn't need to out-tow the neighbors, the regular Titan in XS or SV trim is worth a serious look. The mechanic's tip here is simple. Pull the service history, inspect the differential fluid condition, and drive it hard enough on a test drive to feel how the transmission shifts under load. If it hunts between gears or shutters, walk away. Moving to number 4, let's talk about the GMC Canyon and its sibling, the Chevrolet Colorado. Now, technically these are two trucks, but they share platforms and powertrains, so they face the same used market dynamics. The mid-size truck segment has gotten more competitive, and both of these trucks get overlooked in favor of the Toyota Tacoma, which holds its resale value so aggressively that buying one used almost makes no financial sense. The Colorado and Canyon, by contrast, have depreciated considerably more, which makes them genuinely interesting used purchases for the right buyer. The generation that ran from 2015 through 2022 is where most of the used market action is. These trucks came with a 2.5-liter four-cylinder, a 3.6-liter V6, and a 2.8-liter Duramax diesel. The diesel is the most interesting powertrain in this group from a long-term ownership standpoint. Fuel economy improves meaningfully, and the torquey characteristics make it a surprisingly capable tower for its size. However, the diesel carries a higher repair cost ceiling, and emissions system components on higher mileage examples deserve close inspection. An EGR valve or DPF issue on a mid-sized truck can be an expensive surprise. The V6 is the sweet spot for most buyers. It's proven, parts are accessible, and a well-maintained example with under 100,000 miles represents solid value. The four-cylinder is fine for light duty, but struggles if you plan to tow regularly. The most common complaints on this generation center around 8-speed transmission behavior in earlier model years. Some owners reported rough shifts and software quirks that improved through updates, but it's worth researching the specific year you're looking at. The infotainment systems on earlier examples also aged quickly compared to newer competition. The mechanic's tip here is to listen for drivetrain vibration on the highway during your test drive. Some of these trucks developed drive shaft issues that are worth catching before purchase. A pre-purchase inspection from an independent shop will tell you a lot. At number 3, we have the Ram 1500 Classic. This is a truck that confuses a lot of buyers because Ram sold 2 generations of the 1500 simultaneously for several years. The current generation Ram 1500 gets all the attention, the press, the awards. The Classic is the older body style that Ram kept in production to compete at a lower price point. In the new car market, this made sense. In the used car market, it creates confusion, and confused buyers often pass on vehicles that actually represent good value. The 1500 Classic is based on the 4th generation Ram platform that was a legitimately well-regarded truck in its time. The 5.7-liter Hemi V8 in these trucks has a long reliability track record. It's not the most fuel-efficient engine, and if you're seeing a used example with lots of city miles, the active fuel management system, cylinder deactivation lifter situation is something you need to ask about directly. Hemi lifter failures have been a documented concern on high-mileage examples of this engine, and repair costs are meaningful. It's not a reason to automatically avoid the truck, but it is a reason to ask for records and get a proper inspection. The 3.6-liter Pentastar V6 in this truck is another story. It's a capable engine with a solid long-term reputation, and because buyers almost always gravitate toward the V8, V6 examples can be found at a discount. For a buyer who doesn't need maximum towing capacity and wants a capable, lower-maintenance truck, a well-spec'd Classic with the Pentastar deserves serious consideration. What makes this truck interesting on the used market is simply timing and badge confusion. Dealers sometimes struggle to explain to customers why they should buy the Classic versus spending a little more for the current-gen Ram, and that hesitation drives price down. The mechanic's tip: on any Hemi-equipped example, get underneath and look at the exhaust manifolds, check for lifter tick at cold start, and verify whether the active fuel management components have had any prior attention. At number 2, we have a truck that lost a staggering amount of value in its early years and that the mainstream market never fully embraced: the Ford Ranger. Now, I need to be specific here because there are 2 very different Ranger eras. The old Ranger that Ford sold through 2011 is a completely different conversation. The truck I'm talking about is the reborn Ranger that returned to the American market for the 2019 model year. When Ford brought this truck back, expectations were sky high. Mid-sized trucks were hot, and the Ranger name had serious nostalgia behind it. But the early reception was mixed. The 2.3-liter turbocharged EcoBoost 4-cylinder made good power but got criticized for not feeling as capable as a naturally aspirated V6 in a Colorado or Tacoma. Fuel economy was acceptable but not exceptional. The interior felt a step below competitors at similar prices, and the payload numbers landed lower than some buyers expected. The result is that used Rangers depreciated more than the Tacoma, more than the Colorado in many configurations, and more than buyers of new Rangers probably expected. That depreciation is now an opportunity. The 2.3 EcoBoost is the only powertrain available, which simplifies your decision, but also means you need to pay attention to maintenance. Turbocharged engines reward regular oil changes more than anything else. If you're looking at a used Ranger and the seller can't show you consistent oil change documentation, that should make you uncomfortable. Carbon buildup on the intake valves is a longer-term concern on direct injection turbocharged engines generally, and high-mileage examples may eventually need attention there. The best years to focus on are 2021 and newer, after Ford addressed some of the early software and transmission calibration feedback from owners. The 10-speed automatic transmission that came with this truck got criticism in early years for being too eager to hunt through gears in certain driving conditions. This truck makes the most sense for a buyer who wants a mid-sized truck for daily driving and light to moderate towing, values the Ford dealer network for service, and wants to take advantage of depreciation that the market built in during years when the truck got mixed reviews it may not have entirely deserved. The mechanic's tip: verify the transmission fluid condition, confirm there are no open recalls, and on higher mileage examples have the intercooler and boost system inspected for any signs of prior issues. And now we get to number one, and this one might surprise some of you. The truck that checks every box in this video's premise. Heavily depreciated from its original transaction price, overlooked by mainstream buyers competing against a dominant market leader, and carrying a reputation that doesn't always match the reality of what you actually get for the money. That truck is the Ram 1500 TRX. Stay with me here because I know what you're thinking. That's an expensive truck. And you're right. When it was new, it was an extremely expensive truck. But here's what happened. The TRX entered the market, captured enormous attention, sold at or above MSRP during the peak of the market, and then watched that used market premium collapse as the frenzy ended and dealers started taking them back in trade. Now you can find used TRX examples at prices that represent a very different value proposition than what early buyers paid. The TRX is powered by a supercharged 6.2-liter Hellcat V8, producing over 700 horsepower. It is an absurdly capable off-road performance truck with a suspension system that was genuinely engineered rather than just bolted on. It competes directly with the Ford F-150 Raptor, and depending on who you ask, it beats it in straight-line performance convincingly. So why does it sit? A few reasons. The insurance costs on a 700 horsepower truck are not trivial. Fuel economy is genuinely poor, the tires are specialized and expensive to replace. And a lot of buyers who can afford a used TRX are comparing it directly to a Raptor R, which has its own following. The market for a used supercharged monster truck is simply smaller than the market for a used half-ton daily driver. But for a buyer who genuinely wants this kind of truck, understands the ownership costs, and can find a well-maintained example at a price that reflects current market reality rather than peak market mania, this is a truck that was engineered to be extraordinary and is now accessible at a price that would have been unthinkable during its launch window. The risks are real. High horsepower supercharged engines require disciplined maintenance. You need full service documentation. You need to know whether the truck has been tracked, raced, or modified in ways that could affect reliability. A pre-purchase inspection by a Ram-experienced independent mechanic is not optional here, it is essential. Check the supercharger, verify the transmission condition, and look carefully at the suspension components for any signs of abuse. The mechanic's tip: ask specifically whether the truck has been tuned or modified, because aftermarket modifications on a heavily stressed powertrain can affect both reliability and warranty coverage. If the seller hesitates on that question, that hesitation is your answer. So let's bring this together. A truck sitting on a dealer lot is not automatically a bad truck. Sometimes it's sitting there because the market has moved on, because buyers are chasing a different badge, because the original price was too high, and depreciation has been doing its work, or simply because the truck was misunderstood or overshadowed by a dominant competitor. These situations can create real negotiating leverage, but only if you understand what you're buying, what it might cost to maintain, and what to inspect before you hand over your money. A pre-purchase inspection from a mechanic you trust is always worth what it costs, and on any of the trucks in this video, it is non-negotiable. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 5 trucks would you actually consider buying? What are you driving right now? How many miles are on it? And has it been reliable? Would you buy it again? And if you've owned any of the trucks we talked about today, share your experience in the comments. Your real ownership story is genuinely useful to other buyers who are trying to make a smart decision and avoid an expensive mistake. If this video helped you think about the used truck market a little differently, hit the like button and subscribe. We do honest vehicle rankings, real mechanical explanations, reliability discussions, and used car buying advice that's designed to save you money and keep you out of the shop when you don't want to be there.